In this video, we shall be talking about object destructuring. We shall also look at how we used to access object properties before ES6 and also how to take advantage of this new feature that was introduced in ES6. My name is Kelvin and I am a software developer based in Nairobi, Kenya. And my goal is to help you go through technical documentations so that you may have an understanding of the tools that you're working with. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. In case we mention any link in this video, you can find it in the description section of this video. Let us jump right in. Let us get some things out of the way. In case you are using VS Code as your editor, I will recommend that you install the Quokka.js extension. And what this extension enables me to do is to run my code directly in my editor. So you can see I'm able to console log values directly in my editor. But if you're using a different editor, you can still follow along in your browser console. When it comes to ES6, object destructuring assigns object properties to individual variables. But before we take a look at the ES6 syntax, let us see how we used to do it back in the days. So in case I wanted to access an object property, let's say name, so that I can access the value, I would either use the dot syntax, and you can see that I'm accessing the value in that property, Kelvin, or I can also use the array syntax, and I'm also accessing the value in that property. One thing to note is when it comes to the array syntax, it shines when the property name is not properly formulated. For instance, if I have a string, let's say maybe of name 1, it is impossible for me to use the dot syntax to access that property. So that is where you might reach for the array syntax, and I am able to access the value in that property. Let us return it back. One thing that you immediately note is we will be repeating ourselves, especially when we want to access the different properties in the object. Here I am accessing the property of name, but in case I want to access the profession property, I will also repeat the profile at every instance. So we can also access, that is profile dot profession. So we end up repeating ourselves a lot. And one thing that you'll notice about ES6, it makes us write very short and concise code. So let us take a look at how ES6 object destructuring works. So I will create a different constant, then I will have the curly braces and then point it to the object that I want to destructure. So when I want to access the name property, I will just reference the property name, in this case name, then profession, then address. Let us log those results. So I'll have name, profession, and address. And you can see that Kelvin, software developer, then the object of city are logged. Also note that you can change the property name. In case there is a collision, you can actually use the full colon, then you can have a custom name. Let us say maybe first name. And that you can see that I'm also logging Kelvin on the screen. And this becomes powerful, especially if you don't have a properly formulated name. For instance, let us use the example of name 1. You can use the string representation of that, then have your own variable to access that property. Another way to do it, you can also use the array syntax. It also works the same way. Yeah, so that is basically how the syntax of the object destructuring is set out. But let us take a look at some examples so that we may appreciate the power that it comes with. What if I wanted to access a non-existent property? Let's say I want to access the property of age. And you can see that I am getting undefined. Let me just change this back to name. And you can see that I am getting undefined as my age because the property does not exist in the profile object. And the beauty about this is we can have a default value assigned to this property, or this variable rather. And you can see that everything works as expected. So my age is assigned to 10 because it is null by default because it doesn't exist in the profile object. So I can set a default age or value assigned to it if it doesn't exist. What if we try to destructure a null object? Let's say I am trying to destructure a null object. And this is common, especially if you are trying to access an object from an API that does not return proper results or a proper object, and it returns null. You can see that we cannot read property age of null because it is not an object. Let us just return it back, and cannot destructure property age of basically null. And the way we solve this problem is just by using the OR object. And you can see that we are getting something that we can work with, in this case age. Let us try to look at how we handle nested objects. So we return back to the profile, then we reference the address object. So in case we want to access nested object, it will be easy as just having the object, then we can reach out into the object and access the properties in that object. So in this case, address will be the property. Then we can reach into the property of the address. In this case, city, then country. And when we log the result of city, you can see Nairobi. Then country, you can see Kenya. So that is how we can access nested objects. The final thing that we can look at is a function that accepts an object as its argument. We can destructure the object. Let us say we have a function called stringify profile, which accepts the profile as the argument. Call this function stringify profile, then pass in the profile. Let me collapse this. You can immediately see that without destructuring this object, we end up with a lot of code and repeating ourselves a lot. But we can destructure the arguments that are passed so that we end up with more concise code. So we can have name, profession, address, then remember how we destructured nested objects. So city, and then country. And essentially we can get rid of the profile. We can also get rid of the profile.address. And voila, we end up with very concise code without repeating ourselves. So you can see that Calvin is a software developer based in Nairobi, Kenya. If you have found value in this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. All the links that have been mentioned in this video will be available in the description section. Thank you and see you soon.